Yeah. The lesson is being recorded, so don't worry. So exactly, let me share my screen and also demo what we are going to work on. Okay, and I hope you guys can see my screen. Hope you guys can see my screen. Someone kindly confirm that they can see my screen. Yes, thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fred. So let me just close these unnecessary tabs for now. These unnecessary tabs. Yeah, now we have all the necessary tabs that we need to have. So I want us to build something like this. Very simple. Very simple thing, but very enticing at some point. This is how it works. This is just a demo, a demo of how this thing works. So very simple. You create this page. This is a trivia question. As you can see, this question, it has 30 seconds. So for you to play this whole question with only one question, you need 30 seconds. The time is for you to set, the admin, the person who is creating the question. So after that, you can just click this question and play. But before that, you can see you have this question with only 60 seconds. Then this question has only three questions in it. This trivia has three questions in it. So for example, let's play this first trivia. And you can see we have some few minutes, few seconds left. So you have to just read through the question and then you tick the correct answer. This one is just for demo purposes, so we are going to see how it works. For example, this is just a title for that question. So, so how do we go about this? Who is Evans? Maybe just a random question. Then you tick a random quiz. I want you to check. Once I click this, once I click this, let me just refresh. Once I click this part, you can see it has highlighted this color. Once I click something else, it has highlighted. And if I click outside, it's not highlighting. So that means it has been selected. So let me click on finish the trivia and you can see my score is 0. Very simple. Maybe I can play and see if I can get an answer. Let's say answer. Yeah, and there we have. I got my 5 points because I got my question right. So basically that's we are going to be building. And what about this question with some few questions? So question 1, how is this question? Maybe something just any random answer. How do you take it? Maybe something just random answer. These are just random questions that I was setting for trying the system. And then you can see, yeah, I scored perfectly 15 points. See? Yeah. See? That's exactly what we are going to be building today. But apart from that, you can see this is the client side. What about the admin side here? You see the admin side, admin can edit a question, admin can delete this question or something like that. But how do we create? We have a button here where you can click on create. You have a very good model here. And this one we can try it out and add any random question. And this random question can be yo, how is today? Just a random question. Then here you can set as much time as you want, either 80 seconds. These are seconds, not minutes. So after that, now you can add the question name. How is Saturday? How is Saturday? Good. You can set great. We can say poor. You can say something like trying. You are trying it out. Your Saturday is boring, so you are trying it out. So after you set this question, you can say, you can click here to select the correct answer according to this. Remember, this is the admin side where you are setting the questions. So here I'm going to select, it's great, it's great. Saturday is great today. Then I can click on save. Just wait, and you can see my trivia has been saved successfully. So when I go to my database, when I go to my maybe a database that I've created, I'm going to show you all through these things how you go about it. It's just a demo of what we are building. So we can wait for it to load. It takes a minute depending with the internet speed for that thing. I think today it's taking its time. So once I go to my database like this, and then after I go to my database like this, I can go to where we have my trivia, and you can see you how is today, and how is today. I've created the question. I have set the questions here. You can see the answer how is today, blah blah blah, and the rest, things like that. So exactly that's what we are going to build today. Yeah, that's what exactly you're going to be building today. And as you can see, I've not refreshed, but by default, this one has refreshed our question here. So this is the admin side. What about the client side? This is the client side. Once I refresh, I can see now I have some questions that have been added over here. So that's exactly what I want us to build today. So we can try the delete. I can click on the delete. Do you want to delete this? Yeah, and there we go. You can see I've deleted the question, and this trivia has been deleted successfully. So exactly, so that's what we are going to be building today. So we are going to use Firebase. We are going to use React for that case. So how many people here know React? How many people know how to use React? By show of hands. How many people? By show of hands, or you can still type on the chat. How many people know React or have ever heard of ReactJs? Thank you, Charles. We have Charles Tuku. Anyone else? Are the rest fresh beginners? Yeah, if you are fully beginner, kindly raise up your hand so that we know the pace that we are going to be using for this session. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you for your honesty, guys. So, yeah, with that, I know we are going to regulate the speed. We are going to regulate the thing. So this session is basically mostly 1.5 hours, the high end. Then after that, maybe you open a session for questions. Then after that, maybe if you want to complete the whole system, then we are going to be using next week to complete the session. So this might go for more than one session, that is today and maybe next week on Saturday, the same time. So yeah, how do we go about these things? Yeah. So we are going to start with the what is React? What is React? And how comes we need to use React? And why do we need to use React? Basically, React is just a JavaScript library that was developed by Facebook itself. the Facebook platform itself. So these guys, these developers created React for them to use on internal use, just to create their own applications, just to scale up Facebook with some few things, because they felt other technologies that they were using, they were not good for their company, or it was just boring. At some point it was hard to scale up the system. So they came up with a language, or not really a language, but we can call it a language, that is React framework, but fully uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So they had to take that they know, and then they create their own framework from that technology that they have been using, so that it can fit to their system, so that it can be easy for them to scale the Facebook platform itself. So these developers was they are around three to four people who created the initial product, that is the React framework. So React in general, React is just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript combined all together. Then we play around with some few things. If we combine React, HTML, and CSS, that means we are going to handle our navigations different, things like that. So those are the things that slightly change, but we are going to crack them. So don't worry. So React is just fast. You see how you build your platforms. Maybe you'll take a lot of time to create HTML and CSS website, but if you use React, it's going to give you the boilerplate for creating that application, the boilerplate code for writing that applications. It will handle your navigations in an easy way. You don't have to struggle a lot. Also, React is scalable when creating your own platform. So you can scale easily with React. Anyone can just come and create or continue with your application. Of course, React was built for flexibility, because these guys at Facebook, they felt that they are not flexible with the technology that they were using. So they had to create something that is flexible, that they can use, they can modify. React is good to modify. You can play around with the different features in React, or different tools in React. So of course React is popular. But don't worry, in case you are a beginner, don't worry. You are in the right place. We are going to take care of that. Just in case, if you know some JavaScript in your fingertips, you are good to go. If you know some JavaScript, you are good to go, because we are just going to be writing the normal functions, the normal things, the normal HTML. Yeah. So to start working with React, there are some things that you need to consider, or that you need to think about. React is a framework, or this library that we are talking about. People call it framework, but in reality it's just like a library. But whatever case it fits, as long as you know how to go about it. So to set up React, we need to install several things. Because it's a library, we need to install several things. The first thing that we need to have is Node.js. That is, the Node environment should be installed in our machine. So if we have Node installed, or if we have been running JavaScript, that means we have Node installed. So we don't have to worry about that. So if we have already worked with JavaScript, then that means by default you have already installed Node.js. So if we need Node and our machine satisfies that condition, that particular condition, then means we can continue with the other steps. So to start up with React, we need to install the library itself. That project, we need to create a project, and we have a different ways of doing this. You can work with React, or you can install React with this new technology that is called Vite, npm with Vite or Vite. Then from that, you can continue working with other parts of React. Or you can just go to the React website, or you can just go to the React documentation website, then see how you install React, get started with React, things like that. I think we have the Learn React. Yeah, I think we have the Learn React here. You can see how React is being installed. So I don't think this is the official React website. Yeah, there we have it. Yeah, this is the React documentation website that you can access and just see how you can create your React app in different ways. So mine, I'm going to use a different way. That is by use of this thing we call Vite. Vite is just a light. How can I describe this Vite? Vite, I can just describe. It's just a lightweight of or a light way of installing React or creating your React apps with it. Normally, when you are creating React app with this normal React app, that is npx create React app, at some point this app is going to be too heavy because it installs some dependencies that you really don't need, and by default it's just too heavy. If you have a slow machine, then you might be cooked. If you try to use the create React app itself command, then at some point you'll be cooked. So mine, I like using Vite. So you can just go to Vite or Vite, and just know how what is Vite and exactly what Vite really does. You can just go through the Vite documentation website to know what is React and the rest, things like that. So mine, I'm going to use Vite to create my first React app. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to go to here and then open. I'm going to open my, let me see, I'm going to create a new folder where I'm going to have my project and say React underscore trivia. Yeah, so this is the project that we are going to be working on. So I'm going to open this with Visual Studio Code, and here is where I'm going to create my React app. So let me just zoom a little bit for everyone to see. Yeah, like that. So I'm going to follow this. I'm going to follow these commands here. Then I'm going to create my first React app. So I can do yarn create Vite. Open your terminal, Control J. I can do yarn create Vite, and then I can just enter. Then here after that, you can see it tells me to create a project's name. I can say create. I can just click here and then create. I can call it trivia project, like that. Any name of my choice, trivia project, then enter. Then here Vite, it will give me different technologies that I want to use or that I might prefer to use. Either I can use React, I can use Vue or Vue, vanilla JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript is just the normal JavaScript that you write. So that's what vanilla JavaScript is. We have pre-React is a framework for React. We have React, and then we have framework for React. We have Lit, we have Svelte, we have Solid, we have Quick, then we have others. You can go to others and then you can see the other technologies that you can use. So I'm navigating using my arrow keys in my keyboard. Using the arrow keys in your keyboard, navigate to React, then press enter. Then in React, you are going to choose. Do you want to use TypeScript in React? Do you want to use TypeScript plus SWC? Do you want to use JavaScript? Do you want to use Remix? So mine, I'm just going to go with the vanilla JavaScript React. That one. Yeah. And there we have it. After I press enter, you can see we have some few commands here. The ones that I should follow. Done. Now run, blah, 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 things like this. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do cd trivia project. That is the first command that have been given here. Then I'm going to run yarn. This one has been provided here. So the reason that we run yarn is to install some dependencies. And these dependencies is now like the scripts that you are going to use to run your application. You need to install them. That's exactly what we are doing here. So we can give it a moment for it to install. Yeah, it's done. It's done now. Now we need to run the last command that has been provided, and that is yarn dev to start our React app, yarn dev. Like that. And then we can click this link, then it can direct us here. So I'm going to close this. I don't use this, so let me just use this Chrome. Yeah, and there we have it. There we have our React boilerplate code up and running. Yeah, simple like that. How can you check if you have installed Node.js? Very simple, very simple. You can just open your PowerShell. You can just open your PowerShell, then you can run node. Is it node v? Yeah, node v to run the node version of your machine. As you can see, I'm just running node version 20. I'm running node version 20. Yeah, that's how you can check the version of your node. And if you check if it gives you this version, just know that you have installed. But if you have not installed, it will give you an error that node is not, whatever is not found or it's not defined. Whenever error, that is going to give you out. So the session is being recorded, so don't worry about it. So you see this one is a boilerplate code that has been provided for us. What if I want us to create the first statement? So in React, there are several things that we need to check here. See this trivia project is the project that we have created. So I want us to open the terminal and then just create another terminal. Then I'm going to navigate to trivia project, just like that, for it to merge this project here. So we have some few boilerplate codes that have been given to us over here. We have the src, we have the package.json, where you can see all your dependencies and all the other packages that you are going to install here. So if you are going to get your dependencies that you are going to install here and packages, or your scripts that I said, the installation scripts, they are here, things like that, the project's name. So this one is auto-generated by the system. The moment I was trying to create React app, then it generated all these things. So yeah. Then we have our index.html file that is being visible here. You see this one? Right, you see this link over here. Where is it? Let me do this. You see this Vite plus React? It's found here in this HTML file here. So this one I can change and I can call this Fire React trivia project like that. Once I save, you can see this one has changed to trivia project. So that's where you find this one. But maybe someone is asking, where is this piece of code here? This piece of code that is being run in here. And someone, you can see in this HTML file is where we have this thing here. So this code is not here. Remember, it's React. I've said React is a combination of HTML and JavaScript. So this is how this thing looks like. So just go to your SRC, the source folder, then click the app.jsx. You can either do app.js or app.jsx. It will accept. So this code is inside here. This code is basically inside here. So in case I do away with this piece of code, then then you'll see that text will disappear. What if I add an h1 inside here? What if I add an h1 here? You can see now the hello world statement is being printed here. And as you can see, if I add something here and I just save, I come here, it has been refreshed over here by default. I've not refreshed here because our server is running 24/7. It's running every time because you remember we started our server with yarn dev. Yeah, it's running every time. So whenever we save our application or we save any changes, by default they are going to reflect here in our browser. So yeah, that's exactly what we are doing. So I'm going to remove these pieces of code. I think these things are, some might appear new to us. Yeah, we are going to explain what's happening here, so don't worry. We are going to explain what is this function, what is this app, and the rest. We are going to explain that. So don't worry, guys. You are in safe hands. So let's continue with our React here. I want us to follow this documentation here to have it with us and explain what these things are. You see this piece of code here, starting with function, then the function name, then things like this. Just a moment, guys. Yeah, let's continue. Apologies for that. You see this piece of code over here that you are seeing here. This one, we call it a JSX. What is JSX? Someone who might think or might ask something here. And you can see our file, they are named app.jsx, main.jsx, things like that. What is JSX? JSX is basically a syntax or a syntax extension of JavaScript that combines both JavaScript and HTML like syntax. So you write both HTML and JavaScript like syntax to provide highly functional and usable markups. So JSX is just an extension of HTML and JavaScript combined. We have said we combine JS and we combine HTML. So if you combine HTML and CSS, you come up with a JSX extension. But what is an HTML extension? Is this index.html. You see .html is the HTML extension. CSS extension .css. That's how you know that is a CSS extension. JavaScript.js. The JS is the JavaScript extension that we are talking about. Python.py for Python. Then for React, when you combine HTML and JavaScript, you give birth to JSX. So JavaScript and then HTML, JSX. So that's the combination for HTML and CSS. That is JSX. Yeah, so that's exactly this piece of code is doing. But I want us to break this piece of code for any beginner that we have. So we create a function, and we know functions by default they return a block of code. By default, we know functions return a block of code. Yeah. So we write a function in which we give it a function name, app, and then inside here, of course, if we have any parameter, we are going to pass them here. Then we are going to define our block of code as usual. Then our block of code is going to return this HTML elements over here. So basically that's what this code is doing. Write a function, a normal function, then return a block of code. Then what if we return this block of code, and inside this block of code, we only return these HTML elements over here. Very simple like that. Now, we have introduced a new keyword here, reusable markup or reusable components. Reusable markups or reusable components. So, in JavaScript, now we treat every file, see these files, we can treat them as components. Our components, what do we mean by component? We have our application, or we have an entire, let's assume of an entire house. We have components, we have the floor, we have the ceiling, we have all these things. Remember those, we can treat them as components. Component 1, component 2. What if we combine all those components, all those parts, to build one complete house or to build one car? We have the tires you can treat them as component, the bonnet is another component, the engine is another component, the skeleton is another component for building our entire car. So that's the same concept, nothing else, nothing new, just the same concept. So we have a component, then we have another component in React or a file, then another component that does a particular thing. For example, let me show you with this trivia thing. So you can treat, you see this, you can see the entire application from here, where you can see my cursor. Let me just draw. So you see these parts. See this part or this part? This one can be in several components, several parts that make up an app. But before that, let's start from top here. From here. So we have the heading, that is one component, or the navigation, that can be one component. Then apart from that, we have this section, this other section that I've just drawn here. Then inside this part, we can have two components. We can have two more components. We can have this component. Let me change this. We can have this component, this first component in the left. Then we can have another component. See this component over here. We can have another component. So those are two different components that build this section. What if in React we create one file with only this navigation? Then apart from that, we create another file or a component with this particular part. That's simple. We can have one component that wraps two. Then inside those two, we have one component, one file for that. Then we have one file for that, or one component for that. So that's what we mean by components, things like that. And also we can treat this footer also as a different component, like that. Very simple. So that's what we mean by these components. So let me just do my brush. Yeah, I cleared that. Yeah, so that's what we mean by these components. So for the components, now we know that exactly what we are going to be building. So in case you see me writing something like this, just know that is a JSX, and this JSX is just a combination of HTML and JavaScript. And for the components, we have said we can treat one file as a component, another file as a component. There's another thing that I'm going to be doing, and maybe you'll be wondering what exactly is this. You will see me, you see from this demo, maybe we have one component and we have another component. And then those two components, I'm going to import them inside this my app.jsx file. Where is it? This app.jsx file. That's the root folder. So this is the root folder where you have to create your things here. So whenever you create different components or different files, then you have to export them, export default, whatever app that you have created. Then once you export, you are going to be using them here inside this app.jsx. Because this app.jsx is the one now that is being pushed to the browser. So we take this app.jsx, then we further push it to the main.jsx. Now this main.jsx, now it will push this one, this particular, everything that is inside here is going to push it in the root directory or in the root file. It's going to treat this one as a root file. And this one is the one that is now going to understand the HTML. As you can see, this one is a create root document.getElement by ID root. So this one is the one that is now going to push everything inside our HTML. And you can see in our HTML, we only have the ID for the root that is being defined here. So we have three things. This is the one that is going to be rendered in the HTML. But before we get to this, we have this one. Now that is being pushed to here. But from that, before we get to here, we have our initial app that is now the one that is being redirected to our main. Then main is pushed to this one, and now this one, it will render the output in the browser. Like that, very simple. Yeah. So basically, those are the things that you are going to see me do at some point. So we are going to basically today we are just going to set up the basic things that we need, and maybe if time allows, we try coding some few parts. So let's. I want to introduce you to a new technology that is called Tailwind CSS. Anyone who has ever heard about Tailwind CSS, or they have ever used Tailwind CSS? Anyone among us who has ever used Tailwind? Okay, any one of us who has never used Tailwind CSS? Yeah, yeah. Today actually you're going to learn so many things, so many things. So for those who have never used Tailwind CSS, just said you are going to be doing shortcuts. You see, we have CSS. In CSS, for example, you see this CSS file. How many lines of code do we have? 42. But exactly what were we styling? Almost nothing with 42 lines of code. All the things that we have done is just writing these 42 lines of code to style just this part. It's unacceptable for developers. So we have new technology, not really new. I've used it for around 4 years now. We have tailwind, not preline. So we have Tailwind CSS that acts like a bootstrap. So it has compiled all the elements for CSS, and then it has simplified it for us and just given us an easy way of writing our CSS. So this one, because we are using React, we are not just going to be linking everything anyhowly. So what we are going to be doing, we are going to install the Tailwind CSS itself. So to use Tailwind CSS and React, you can just go to get started, and then you can see from our documentation here installation on what we are going to be using. So to get started, you have to choose the framework that you are using. For people who are using frameworks, you see framework guide, you just click on framework guide. For those who are using CDN, you can do that. But because we are using framework, let's do this. And which framework are we using? We are using Vite. So in Vite, just go to Vite, then follow these installation procedures, and then you do that. So what is the first step? Create your project. Do we have our project created? Yeah, we have our project created. So what is the next thing? Install Tailwind CSS. So to install Tailwind CSS, you can do this npm install Tailwind CSS, but I'm just going to copy here because I don't use npm, I use yarn. I'm going to do that. So here, I'm going to run yarn. Oops. Let me just exit this. Create a new one. I'm going to do yarn add. Then I'm going to paste that like that. Then I'm going to wait for it to install my Tailwind CSS inside my application. As you can see, it's done. It has installed Tailwind CSS. So for you to check if it has installed Tailwind CSS, you can go to your packages.json. Oops, it has installed Tailwind CSS in the wrong place. Oh no. So it has installed Tailwind CSS in the wrong place. So let me just navigate to the correct folder. Then I'm going to install now Tailwind CSS and then wait. We are going to see a package that will be added here, Tailwind CSS here. Yeah, it's now good. So you can check your package.json. Then you'll find that in your dependencies, it will have, it must have added, yeah, we have our Tailwind CSS that has already been installed over here. So we go back to our documentation, then we do the npx tailwind css init to create the initialization file. Just paste like that, and you can see now Tailwind has already been added here in our configuration file. So back to the documentation, what do we need? Go to the configuration tailwind.config.js, this one, then add some few content. So I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to copy everything without minding, then I'm going to replace that with the new one. Then the last thing that I'm going to add is add the Tailwind directives to your CSS. So this one should be inside the index.css file. So do we have index.css? Yeah, we have index.css. So we do away with all those styles, the default styles, then we add our styles over there, like that, very simple. And now we have CSS inside our application. So we can try it out. We can run our application and see if this one will work. We can do this. We can try to see if our application will work out. So you can see here, so we need to style this. So how do we style our Tailwind CSS? You can just check it your app.js. We have been given on how to try it. Just create anything, then you add the class name, then you do this like this. So let's go to our index app.js. Then because we have our hello world, then we do like this. We are going to explain, then we see, we refresh. You can see it's not working. So what we need to do, of course, we are going to restart our server. We are going to restart our server, and as you can see, now it's working. Once we restart, we can actually add color. We can actually add color. We can actually add color, and as you can see, it has changed the color. So assume now you are creating CSS, the normal CSS that we use. How long could you have taken to create these styles? Text decoration, underline, text color, red, blah blah blah. Then specify the opacity for that particular color. That's a very long process for you to create your React apps. So the best way that we can do is just creating with our Tailwind CSS. So this one works the same as Bootstrap CSS, but it's slightly different. So that's how you use this Tailwind CSS, or you initialize the Tailwind CSS. So basically that's it for that setup. So today we are just going to be doing the setups, nothing complex that we are going to be building, just doing the setups. So the next thing that we are going to set up is Firebase. How many people know Firebase? However, they have ever used Firebase as well. Yeah, thank you. Charles, Fred, I can see that you have ever used Firebase. But for the rest who have never used Firebase, let's see now what is Firebase. So Firebase is basically a database. Then we have MySQL, then we have MongoDB, then we have all those other database like the Superbase and other databases. So still Firebase is one of them. So you can use Firebase for anything. But Firebase offers some things, several things. Firebase, in Firebase you can do authentication. In Firebase um, you can do authentication, you can host your platform in Firebase. Yes, it's Firebase, but Firebase is just a collection of different different tools. We have database, we have authentication, we have analytics, we have all those kind of things that you can use for Firebase. Yeah, so Firebase is a database that we can really use. We can really use. So for us, we are going to use Firebase. How do you set up your Firebase? Let's see. Let's see. How do you set up your Firebase? Just go to console.firebase.com. Console, let me share this link. Console.firebase.google.com. Then you will access your Firebase. So in case if you have a Firebase, if you have a Google account, of course everyone has a Google account, then you have your Firebase there. There's nothing new you need to register. You just need to start. The same way that in case you have a Gmail, the same way by default you have Google Photos, Google Drive, all those are the things that come in default with with Google. So that's the same case for Firebase. In case you have a Google account, then you have access to all those things like Google account, Google Drive. Actually, you have access to many things that you don't know. Even things like cloud computing, you have access. You have an account in cloud computing. You have not just started using the cloud computing because Google gives us that particular service. And this one is for free. You don't have to pay for cloud services and also to use Firebase. So to get started with Firebase, just go to Firebase. Just go to Firebase. Then after you go to Firebase, then you can start working on your project. So how do you create a database or do you set up your project? Very simple. Yours will have no project, so it will tell you to create a project. It will tell you to create a project. So just click on create new project. Then here you are going to add the project name that you are going to be working with. Just add a project name that you are going to be working with. So here is where we are going to type our project name. We can say trivia. We can just call it trivia, things like that. Then you can click on continue. Then we scroll, click on continue. Then here you are going to select your default. You're going to click and select your default account for Firebase. Then you are going to click on create. I'm going to click on create project here. Then we are going to wait for it to propagate. Then we are going to wait for it. Is it okay now? Yeah, it's good now. So the next thing that we need to do, we just need to click on continue. Then after we click on continue, now we can create our Firebase. So here we are going to click this. In Firebase, we have different services that you can use. We have different things that you can use. So you can create your iOS applications with Firebase. You can as well create your Android applications for those who are using Flutter. You can also create web. Ours is web, so I'm going to click the web. This is the button here. You see this button, the web. I'm going to click on the web. Then here I'm going to add a web name. So mine, I'm just going to give it trivia. Then I'm going to click on Firebase hosting because I want us to host our platform here in Firebase. Then I'm going to click register app. I'm going to click on register app. Then I'm going to just click on next, keep on clicking next until it tells me continue to console. And there we wait for it to provision. And then you can see it's good now, So the next thing that we need to do, add here is a project now. You see that in mine here, we have Firestore database that is going to store our trivia. So just click here on build, click on build, then look for Firestore database. Search for Firestore database. Then for Firestore database, you are going to set it up. Then here, you are going now to click on create database like this. Then I'm going to leave my location for the server to be default. Then I'm going to click on next. Then here, I'm going to click on start on test mode. You are going to start on test mode. And test mode is only available for 1 month, but you can change the dates later. Start in test mode, then create our database. Then you wait for it to provision. Yeah, and there we have it. There we have our database ready to receive our trivia questions. So that's how you set up our Firebase. But remember, we are working locally here. So how do we go about connecting our Firebase with React app, with our first React app? Very simple. I want us to go to React. You see in the source folder, this src. I want us to create a folder inside that, and then we call it utils or utilities. So for these utilities, I'm going to create another file inside it and call it firebase.js, JavaScript file. And then inside here is where now I'm going to hook my Firebase with that project. Very simple, but how do we do that? Just go to Firebase website itself, click on settings, see this settings button here, project overview, we have a settings button here, then project settings, this project settings, then scroll down, just scroll down where you see this web, your apps, where you have your apps. Then you copy the configuration file. We have this configuration file. Then mine, I just want to copy the config. That is the configuration file. I'm just going to copy this configuration file. I click, by default it's on npm, but I want just to select this config. then just copy this configuration file. Then I'm going to paste it here in the firebase.js. That's how you connect the two. So we have connected the two. I want us to play around with this code, then we call it a day. So the things that we are going to set, how many things are we going to set? There is only this, and then we are going to end the session in the next few minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes after we are just done setting up our application. So we are not going to be coding, we are just going to set up this, and maybe in the next session we are going to start coding the platform. That is the trivia. So yeah, here we are going to write some few codes in which I'm going to explain what they are doing, things like that. So we have our configuration file. Inside this configuration file, we have our API key for connecting our database and the rest, or our application in general. We have the authentication domain that has been provided for us by default. This one, it will help us when we are authenticating our platform. We are going to see how. Our API key for the whole project, then we have the project ID that we have created. Storage buckets, that is going to be used in the storage, still in Firebase. In case you wanted to add a messenger or a message system or a messaging feature, there we have it. We have our messaging ID. We have our app ID and we have our measurement ID that is used in Google Analytics. You see this G means Google Analytics. So those are the things that we have over here. But because I want us to do some things here, we are going to explain what these things do. We are going to import some modules here that we need to use. Remember, we are using Firebase, but in Firebase we might require to import some modules. We might be required to import some modules in Firebase, like, for example, like Firebase slash combat. Let me explain. I'll explain what this combat does. Combat slash something like Firestore, because we only need Firestore. See, this is a Firebase module. But how do we use this module? So what we need to go to your terminal, then install the Firebase inside your project. So I'm going to do yarn add Firebase. Yarn add Firebase. So I'm just adding Firebase inside my application. It's nothing new. I'm just adding Firebase inside my application. So I'm going to wait for it to install, but in the meantime, as we wait for it to install, let me just import one more module, that is import into quotation marks Firebase slash combat slash app. Only those two. Firebase authentication, yeah. But this import, I'm going to make it a module as well, Firebase from Yeah, and there we have our Firebase ready. So we have around 5 minutes and then we terminate the session. So I'm going to define one thing here that is very simple for us to use. So I'm going to define a variable here. You see this Firebase configuration file. Every time I want to use my database, I'm not going to every time copy this configuration file. Go where to I want to use my app, then configure it again. No, that's very really hard. So I'm just going to create a variable that exports these things here. So I'm just going to create const db that stands for Firebase, not for Firebase, but stands for db. But before this, let me just change this for it to look better. So let me create, I'm just going to change this a little bit. Const, instead of Firebase config, let me just change this to Firebase app. Const Firebase app is equal to Firebase dot initialize app. Just going to change some few things here. Just a moment, I cross check. Firebase app is equal to Firebase dot initialize app, where we have this one and this one. Yeah, it's working. It's this function here that is complaining. So it's Firebase db dot Firebase app dot Firestore, like that. So this one, so that was the last thing that we are going to do for today. For today, we are just explaining and doing the basic setup. So that's all the setup that we need to do for today. Then in the next session, whatever we are going to do, we are going to now get into the actual coding and actually code these features. Come here, create our trivia. Come here, create our trivia. After creating our trivia, add it here, add the delete function, then come here, play our trivia, where we can play our trivia like this. We can play our trivia session like this. Then we get the results for that. And these results, by the way, they are stored in the database. That's why we are adding this Firebase. These results, once I play once, these results will be stored in my database. So yeah, those trivia results are being stored in my database. So exactly that's what we are going to achieve as from the next session. So thank you guys. That was basically it for today. But in case you want to learn this introduction to React, we have this course for you. It's free. You can just go here and get started with React. You can just go there in that course, that is progskill.com React. Then you get started with React. In the meantime, as we wait for the next session. So you can go to that course, you can sign up, you can read through. Then every time feel free to visit that website. So basically that's it for today. And we are going to end our session there. Then in the next session is where we are going to learn on how to code this platform. Just continue with the other parts, that is playing the trivia and the rest. So thank you guys for joining. I hope you have learned. In case you have learned, if you have learned something, or if you are ready for the next session, just give me a thumbs up thumbs up like that. I will really appreciate. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone, for giving the thumbs up. So thank you guys for joining. So basically that's it for today. See you in the next session.